Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So in today's video we are going to discuss about the causes of economic globalization. So without wasting more time, let's begin. So firstly, we have a question. How can the emergence of economic globalization best be explained and how far has it progressed? So, as you know, there is nothing new about economic globalization, right? The development of trans-border and transnational economic structures have been a central feature of imperialism. And arguably, the high point of economic globalization came in the late 19th century with the scramble of European states for colonizing Africa and Asia. So, nevertheless, modern and past forms of globalization differ in important ways. Earlier forms of globalization, sometimes seen as proto globalization, usually established transnational economic organizations on the back of expansionist political projects. Okay, so regardless of their spread and success, empires never succeeded in obliterating boundaries and borders. They merely registered them to the benefit of politically dominant powers, often establishing new boundaries between the civilized world and the barbarian one. In the case of contemporary phenomena of globalization, in contrast, the web of economic interconnection and interdependence has extended so far that is possible for the first time to conceive of the world economy as a single global entity. Now we will see what is the meaning of transnational economic organizations. So, as you know, the modern globalized economy came into existence in the second half of the 20th century. So, it was a product of two phases. The first phase, which lasted from the end of World War II to the early 1970s, was characterized by new arrangements, okay, for the management of the international financial system. In the post-war period, which became known as the Bretton Woods system, right, through a system of fixed exchange rates, regulations and support. So Bretton Woods aimed to prevent a return to the beggar Thai neighbor economic policies that had contributed to the Great Depression of the 1930s, and in the process helped to fuel political extremism and aggressions, together with the Marshall Plan, which provided US financial aid to Europe, in particular support post-war reconstruction and the wide adoption of Keynesian economic policies aimed at delivering sustained growth. So the Bretton Woods system underpinned the so-called long boom of the post-1945 period. Nevertheless, the collapse of Bretton Woods in the 1970s, allowing major currencies to float instead of staying fixed, initiated the second phase in the development of globalized capitalism. So, the Bretton Woods system had been based on the assumption that the world economy consisted of a series of interlinked national economies. Its purpose was to guarantee economic stability at the national level by regulating trading relations between and amongst nation states. That is important point. However, the breakdown of the system weakened national economies in that the shift from fixed to floating exchange. So, the to floating exchange rates exposed national economies to greater competitive pressures. As a result, and in conjunction with other factors such as the growing significance of transnational corporations, national economies were increasingly drawn into a web of interconnectedness. So, the economic interconnectedness achieved truly global dimensions in the 1990s thanks to the collapse of communism in Eastern Europe and elsewhere and the opening up of the Chinese economy. However, although there may be broad agreement about the events through which the global economy came into existence, So there is much more debate about the deeper forces and underlying dynamics that help to shape and perhaps determine these events. So these debates reflect competing perspectives on global political economy and contrasting positions on whether economic circumstances are best explained by structural factors such as the organization of production or by the free choices made by economic actors, be these states, firms, or individual. So, in practice, complex economic developments such as the emergence of global capitalist system are best explained through the dynamic relationship between structures and agents. So, the most influential structuralist explanation of the emergence of a global economy is the Marxist argument that capitalism is an inherently universalist economic system. This point we have already discussed. So, in short, globalization is the natural and inevitable consequence of the capitalist mode of production. Okay, now we'll see what is the meaning of transnational corporation. See, transnational corporation or TNC is a company that controls economic activity in two or more countries. The parent company is usually incorporated in one state with subsidiaries in other. Although subsidiaries may be separately incorporated affiliates, such companies are now generally referred to as transnational corporations rather than multinational corporations. So there is difference between both of them, as TNCs as opposed to MNCs, to reflect the extent to which their corporate strategies and processes transcend national borders rather than merely crossing them. So, integration across economic sectors and the growing importance of intra-firm trade has also allowed TNCs to operate as economies in their own right, benefiting from geographical flexibility, advantages in product innovation, and the ability to pursue global marketing strategies. Okay. Although liberals fiercely reject the critical Marxist view of capitalism, they nevertheless accept that globalization is fueled by an underlying economic logic. In their case, this is linked not to the impulses of a capitalist enterprise, but in essence to the content of human nature, especially the innate and rational human desire for economic betterment. As you know, what is the meaning of the rational thinking, right? As we know, according to liberals, every individual has rational thinking. They can think well, right? So, as far as explaining when and how this inclination towards globality started to be realized, liberals often emphasize the role of technological innovation. So, the technology, needless to say, has long played a role in facilitating transborder and even transworld connections between peoples, from the introduction of the telegraphs to the telephone and the wireless, the development of the aeroplane, television, and the liquid fuel, and the introduction of containerization in sea transport. However, advances in information and communications technology (ICT) notable examples include the invention of optical fibers in the late 1960s and the introduction of commercial silicon chips in 1971 and of personal computers, PCs, in 1981 have played a particularly important role in spurring progress towards globalization, especially by facilitating the development of global financial markets and the global administration of corporations. Okay. So, nevertheless, the global economy is not the creation of economy and technological forces alone. Political and ideological factors also played a crucial part. Realist theories reviewing the ideas of mercantilism have countered the liberal and Marxist idea that globalization represents the final victory of economics over politics by emphasizing that in crucial ways. The global economy is a product of state policy and institutional regulation. Far from having sidelined states, globalization may in certain respects be a device through which powerful states, and especially the USA, have achieved their objectives. Let's take an example. The USA was instrumental in both the creation of the Bretton Woods system and its collapse. In this sense, the globalization may be a response to the relative decline of the US economy in the 1970s and 80s. So the shift towards a more open and liberalized trading system being a means of widening opportunities for US based transnational corporations, thereby underpinning the health of the US economy. Indeed, much of this was achieved through rather than in spite of the institutions of economic governance that were constructed in the post 1945 period. So, the disproportionate influence that the USA exerts over the World Bank and the IMF, and the role played by the USA in transforming the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade GATT into the more strongly pro-free trade world trade organization WTO demonstrates the extent to which economic globalization was structured in line with US priorities led out through the Washington Consensus. Finally, these developments also have an ideological dimension. Unlike, for example, 19th century imperialism, 20th and 21st century globalization has not been brought about through coercion and explicit political domination. While liberals may argue that globalization by consent reflected, for example, in an eagerness of states to join the WTO, reflects an underlying recognition of mutual economic benefit. Critical theorist who emphasizes that the benefits of globalization are unequally shared argue that this consent is manufactured through the spread of pro-market values and a culture of consumerism and materialism. In this view, the progress of economic globalization is underpinned by the advance of the ideology of neoliberalism, which preaches both that there is no viable economic alternative to the global capitalist system and that the system is equitable and brings benefits to all. So friends, that's all for today. These are some causes of the economic globalization. I hope you understand all the points clearly. If you have any doubt, feel free to ask any question to me. If you like this video, hit the like button, do share my video and do subscribe my YouTube channel for the more videos. See you in the next video. Till then, bye bye, take care.